2 years in when the Enron balloon went up, and horribly frustrating because people forget now, but at the end of 2001, I think we were number 8 or 9 in the world.
Tony Williams is the founder and principal of Jomati Consultants, a UK-based international management and consultancy for the legal industry. Its clients include an impressive range of law firms in the UK, US, continental Europe, Asia and Australia, advising them on issues such as expansion, strategy, alliances and reorganisation. Tony, a qualified lawyer in England and Wales, Hong Kong and Victoria, Australia, has over 3 decades of experience in the legal profession, including wide-ranging top management roles as a former global managing partner of the Magic Circle law firm Clifford and the worldwide managing partner of Anderson Legal. At both Clifford and Anderson Legal, he was instrumental in major strategic review and expansion. He is also a founder member of the Hallsbury's Law Exchange, an independent and politically neutral legal think tank which contributes to the development of law and the legal sector, and the consultant editor of the Law Business Review. Tony is an expert on the Times Law blogs. He is the founder and chair of the Jomati Foundation, which provides financial assistance in the area of legal education and access to law, and is on the advisory panel of the BLD Foundation. Tony, welcome to the BLD interviews.
Thank you very much.
Tony, I'm going to go straight in. I mean, you have led 2 of the world's largest law firms, Clifford and Anderson Legal. Were there members of your family who helped you, who were lawyers and helped you to get in?
No, I was the first lawyer in our family. In fact, no other member of the family was involved in any of the professions at all. So no, I was the first to go down that route.
Okay, so what made you decide to become a lawyer?
I don't know really. I suppose during sixth form there were various sort of presentations and sort of work experience things done, and that sort of fired up my interest. And it struck me as just a fascinating career. I didn't really know much about it. I mean, compared to students these days, without access to the web and whatever, they just treat, they've got all this information at their fingertips. It was, you tended, I think, at that stage to sort of drift into jobs and careers more than really seriously think them through. But I thought about it, thought I might enjoy it, and off I went.
So you did your A-levels, but you weren't quite clear, even at that stage?
Well, I applied to do law at university while on A-levels, and actually, for a variety of family reasons, I ended up taking a year off then between school and university. And in part of that time, I worked in the law firm to just get some work experience. And actually that ended up being the firm that I did my training contract.
Okay, so you took a year off, a gap year, as we call it now. And what did you do before?
Well, it wasn't the gap year as you'd see it now, because it wasn't sort of filled with fun. The reason I took it off was just after my A-levels, my mother died, and my father was seriously ill. So I took it off actually to mainly be around him, if you like. So I didn't get off travelling and other exciting things. So the back end of that year, I then started in this local law firm. Again, a case of serendipity. I was working in a local off licence.
Oh, off licence!
as a sort of weekend type job, and told the boss there that I was really looking for a legal job, and he said, well, one of our regulars is a solicitor, I'll ask him. So he asked him, and he said, well, I haven't, but we've got a partners meeting next week, I'll ask the other partners. And this chap rang me up and said, well, would you like a job? So
the rest is history.
The rest is history.
So it really started at an off license.
It really all started in an off license, yes. So that's the element of serendipity and all these sorts of things.
Excellent. I mean, Tony, you were at Clifford for over 18 years. I mean, you actually became the global managing partner there. What would you say was your, what you felt was the greatest achievement?
It's difficult because obviously in an organisation like that, it's not really down to one person as such. But I think the key thing started with my predecessor, Geoffrey Howard, together and then put through by me was really a range of changes to make the firm already was quite an international firm, but we put through a range of changes both to coordinate the firm much more effectively. We moved from office management to practice group management on a global basis, so it was much more coordinated. And quite frankly, we also gave the firm a damn great kick up the pants to get it running better and more
Well, you were in the
effectively.
middle of that, though. You were in the middle of that, creating that.
Oh, very much so. I mean, and I was very pleased that my last full year there as managing partner was then our most profitable year. I think in that year we were second only in the UK market to Slaughter and May, which isn't a bad position to be in.
Not bad at all.
And it's great to see it's gone on to even bigger and better things since then.
It's still the world's largest per number, I believe.
Not sure.
Maybe not. Maybe not. You in 2000 you went on to Anderson Legal to head up Anderson Legal, and you did quite a lot of stuff there. But within a year of your joining, the Enron crisis, of course, which was then the largest corporate bankruptcy in the US history, happened, and you were bang in the middle of that. This global news. How did you manage that crisis?
Well, it was a pretty frustrating period, as you can imagine. It was actually about 2 years in when the Enron balloon went up, and horribly frustrating because people forget now, but at the end of 2001, I think we were number 8 or 9 in the world in terms of law firm revenues, and the corresponding time next year we'd gone. So it just shows how fragile these sorts of things have been. And it was very frustrating because we really were starting to make progress. Were we where we wanted to be? No, but we were on a track. So the early part of 2002 was a fairly horrendous time. But I think it's one of life's rich parts of life's rich tapestry, in that you need to go through some of these.
Yeah, how did you manage that kind of crisis?
Tough. I mean, I had really, I suppose, 2 main roles. One was to coordinate across Anderson Legal to make sure that we, wasn't trying to control what all other parts of the organisation did, because it was just too big to control it, but at least to make sure it was coordinated and we were being sensible. So, and many of the firms were big enough to go their own way or to link with others. I mean, people like Garrigues in Spain just re-established themselves, and Rudder and Tan in Singapore and others like that. Others, smaller ones, particularly across Europe, ended up a lot of them going with Ernst & Young, for example.
That's great.
The English practice was a bit more difficult because Deloitte's that were merging with Anderson didn't want a legal practice. Even refused to meet me, which was not one of my happiest moments. And we actually had to go into an orderly dissolution then and try and get homes for as many people as possible, try and bundle up bits and move them in that way. And I mean, that was broadly successful. I mean, the vast majority did get jobs, and very good jobs in the end. But like any of those, I mean, you're used to dealing with crises from a client point of view. From your own point of view, it's very much more difficult. We were a general partnership, so we all faced bankruptcy. I had the call that I think any spouse doesn't want to have or receive with my wife one night when I said, I think it's very important that you understand that within the next 3 months I could well be bankrupt. And in her typical inimitable way, she came back and said, yes, of course I understand that. I've got enough money to get the children through school. We started with nothing, so if necessary we'll start with nothing again. And you've got 500 people relying on you, so sort them out first and then come back to me.
How wonderful.
And that was tremendously powerful, I mean, to have that level of support. And you learned a lot about people, how people behave under intense and personal pressure. The good and bad of that. You learn that people you expected to be very strong crumpled, and people you expected crumpled were very strong. And you find sort of, depth of your own personal strengths that enable you to carry on. So it's I wouldn't want to go through it again.
No, no.
But particularly given what I'm doing now and everything else, it's actually quite a useful part of the.
It was like a training ground, doesn't it?
As I say, I wouldn't normally put that on an ECV, I don't think.
I mean, you were in the need. I mean, how did you cope with the media attention at that time?
That was tough. I mean, when you see notices in the legal press virtually on a daily basis that we're all bankrupt and, abandoned by Anderson or all of this, or we're not going to do this.
And people were jumping ship, of course.
And, to try and get people to behave moderately sensibly. And actually we did, and, we managed an orderly dissolution. We paid everybody off. We managed to pay anybody that we had to make redundant significantly in excess of the sort of statutory amounts. So, and we kept a team on board for, I think it was 3 months after dissolution, to find homes for the trainees, because we had a lot of both current trainees, most of which got jobs very quickly, but we had a pipeline going out for a few years. And it was really quite encouraging the way that particularly the city firms sort of rallied round, and I think pretty much everybody that wanted to continue in the law got a job at the end of it. Some had to wait 6 months or a year, and we paid them for that as well.
What you did was pretty amazing, because a lawyer gave you Partner of the Year in 2002, following what you did at Anderson Legal.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to walk out of a train crash and get an award. Normally you only get those if you're actually being successful.
You walked out of the train crash without massive injury. Everybody's,
It was very funny, because I was getting that award from Angus Dayton, who just that week had to resign from Have I Got News For You?
Of course, yes,
for
at
the
that time,
various
yes.
sort of prostitute things or whatever. And as I went up, I thought, so one unemployed presenter is giving the award to one unemployed managing partner. I thought there's a rich irony in this one.
At least you can see the funny side right now. So, given what you did at Clifford, Anderson Legal, winning an award even in that kind of crisis, why did you not go ahead and another global law firm? Why did you decide? It was 2002 you then formed the Jomati.
Yes, I think, well, firstly I had a 3-month break at the end of that, because I just realised how quite both physically and mentally exhausted I was, and I started thinking, what the hell do I want to do next? And provided the Anderson Legal sort of dissolution went as we hoped, I was going to have a relatively decent level of sort of financial security, so that helped. And I thought, what the hell do I want to do? And you mentioned, why not go and run another law firm? Well, there aren't that many vacancies at any time, and most of them are filled within firms. The taking of outsiders is relatively rare. But I did think of joining some US firms to perhaps run their European practices, or going back and being a corporate lawyer, or going in-house, or private equity. And I had various discussions with all of those. And I think I used that period in part not only to decide what I wanted to do, but what I didn't want to do. And I decided to knock these things off the list. Because I think one of the things I've learned about myself is I'm one of these people that if I really like what I'm doing and like the people I'm doing it with, I give a really high level of performance. But if either of those aren't aligned, I can't fake it. So I'm down to a 60, 70%. So I've got to really be passionate about what I'm doing. And I suppose in the back of my mind, I'd always thought about doing consulting, not quite so early. I thought I'd be at Anderson perhaps 5 or 10 years, get it to a certain level, and then move on. So it was a bit earlier than I thought, but I thought, well, the whole business of law just fascinates me, and there's so much scope to do it. Why don't I try? And so I put my shingle up in the October.
And how was it beginning?
Well, of course, I fell into the classic new consultants trap in the beginning, in that one of the week before I was due to start, one of the American firms I'd seen rang me up and said, Tony, we really liked seeing you, but we've been thinking we're not ambitious enough across Europe. You'll get fed up with us, and quite frankly, we'll get fed up with you. But you said you were thinking of doing consulting. Can we be one of your first clients? And then another friend of mine rang me from his firm and said, look, we've got various arrangements, best friends, whatever, across Europe, we're a bit of a mess, can you go and help us with that? And it's it's what any new consultant will call their, if you like, their mates.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And it kicked me off and whatever,
Absolutely.
and I thought, oh, this is easy. And of course, they finished, and a few months later, I thought, oh, there's no more work. And you realise you've actually just as you have as a lawyer, you've got to build your connections, build your contacts, and it takes a very long time because people need to build trust in you, recognise you've got something to say, and have something where they think you will be useful to them.
And value to you.
Yes. So once I went through that initial stage, there was a bit of a lull, and then I sort of built it up from there and added some more consultants and added some more researchers.
And you never look back at the scene.
No, I thoroughly enjoy it. It's great fun. It's a very international practice. Only it varies each year, but only between about a quarter and a third of my clients are in the UK.
The rest mostly in the US.
About 35-40% in the US, but the rest spread. I mean, last year it was from, I think, Buenos Aires to Jakarta and Sydney to Helsinki, I think it was.
Okay.
Good for the air miles, if nothing else.
No, no way, it's very hard to know.
But a fascinating range from very big, major international firms to much smaller firms, either in the UK or around the world, that are looking at their markets and what they should be doing, to in-house counsel we do work for, and as well the UK bar. So quite a broad range, and it's particularly at this time, it's great to be able to sort of lift the lid and look inside.
Challenging.
It's quite a it's quite a privileged position in many ways, because every firm sees their own issues and their own problems just through their prism.
Absolutely. Tell you set up the Jomati Foundation. I know that you put quite a sizable chunk of your income to the foundation to really for advancement of access to education, really. And I know you also, of course, fund the BLD Foundation. What inspired you to do this?
Well, I think as I mentioned, I was very lucky in my legal career. As I said earlier, I sort of drifted into law almost by accident. But I was fantastically well supported. The firm that I did my work experience with in my gap year were tremendously helpful to me. When I went off to university, they bought me my books. They generally helped me through. My father died during my first year, and I always had summer jobs with them and various other things, and they were really lovely people to work with. In fact, my principal, who is actually still working, well into his 70s, and I went for cricket last year, so we still regularly keep in touch. But I appreciated that support, and also that my generation, because of my family circumstances, I got a full grant through university.
So you didn't have a silver spoon or no?
So I had a full grant through, and I actually got a small grant for my Royal Society finals, as they were then. Even then I was sort of living on one credit card for the other, but and then off you went. And I think that was one of the great things about, I think, all of the professions, but the legal profession in particular, in the 70s and 80s. As the profession expanded, the range of people in it dramatically expanded, from a range of different backgrounds and whatever, and they all had access to a range of firms. There wasn't such a thing as a magic circle for firms. All firms were very small, but they could develop, if they worked hard and they were able, they could develop their careers, and off they went, no matter what their background. And I just felt, over the number of years, it's become so much more difficult now. The issue of, the tuition fees, the student loans putting off good candidates, the difficulty of getting training contracts, the funding of LPCs, whatever, it's a massive barrier. And I just feel very strongly that we have, anything that moves any of the professions back to children who just have access to bank and mum and dad is I think it's bad for the profession, but I think it's morally bad as well. So that's very simply where I come from on that. And so we, as Jomati Consultants, we put 5% of our fee income into the foundation each year. And that does a number of things. Obviously help, we try and help you as well, but we try and split it. In part, it's funding organisations such as your foundation and other sometimes startups or whatever, but often with a steer either to rule of law, access to justice, whatever, particularly in the developed world, but in this country encouraging young people to think of law as part of their career, whether through trial competitions or other access programs. And the other half, it never quite works out like this, but the other half goes on a range of bursaries that we provide to law students. We don't provide 100% bursaries, they're normally only about £5,000, but hopefully enough to give people a kick.
And I know some of our students, BLD Foundation, have benefited from
Good.
that. So thank you very much.
Pleasure.
I mean, you've been quoted as saying that the 1980s to 2008 was the golden age for law firms. No one would doubt, of course, that it's been really tough, and law firms have to change the way they operate since 2008. What would you say are those fundamental changes since that time?
I think we've got to stand back and almost like a new entrant might do, almost with a blank sheet of paper, and say, you know, what services is it the client wants? How do they want them delivered to us? And what price point are they prepared to pay? And look at the way we supply the services, because it's a sweeping generalisation, but the way many firms have worked hasn't changed dramatically in 20 years.
No.
And when you look at changes in many other businesses, you know, that's really not acceptable.
No.
So we are going to have to look at our model. How many trainees do we recruit? What paralegals do we use? What is the career path? Is non-equity and equity partnership appropriate anymore? And if so, in what numbers? But always bearing in mind, whoever our target client base is, how do we deliver the service they want at the price they want? We're in a very difficult position at the moment, from the profession growing very dramatically through the 80s and 90s.
Absolutely.
But always demand outstripping that. You know, we're now in a period, and we have been for the last few years, where there's an oversupply of lawyers. Probably, some say 5%, I'd probably say closer to 10%, I think, in all honesty. And of course that's had a devastating effect on the career opportunities for younger lawyers.
For the young ones, yes. That is, that's probably another conversation entirely. You know, the clients are very demanding now. I've read of global council saying, well, we want more for less, and we're demanding more. Do you think law firms are prepared for these demands?
I think when you've had 25 years where you can put your charge, where you're pretty much always charging on a billable hour, and where you can put those rates up by double the rate of inflation every year, it's a bit of cold turkey to suddenly change. But I think you have to recognise, particularly the larger clients who are spending 6, 7, 8, even 9-figure sums on legal fees. When you're spending that sort of money, you have the buying power. And so ultimately what the consumer wants, the consumer gets, if not from you, from somebody else. And you either get with that programme or you don't. I think firms are understanding that more now. I'm seeing much more innovation in type of service and in pricing.
Can you give examples?
But nothing like enough. I mean, you're seeing more people offering fixed pricings. You're looking at firms providing services online or enabling the client to manage the instructions or whatever online, these sorts of things. You're seeing intelligent drafting tools being used. You're seeing much better research capabilities in firms. You're seeing much more accelerated training programs as well. So quite a number of things going on, but I don't think that I would describe them more as evolutionary rather than revolutionary, and I'm not sure firms have got the time.
What do you want to see there? What kind of changes do you think?
I would want firms to be brave enough to go back to what I said, the blank sheet of paper, and say, map out, if I started my firm now, what would it look like? And then map it against where you are now. And I accept you can't flip from that to that immediately. But you've then got to ask yourself what things are getting in the way of us moving across there. Sure. Now you may have premises issues, you may have other issues that stop it. But I mean, that should be, if that's what you think the optimum is for the client service, there should be a journey at least. And
to manage that change.
And that's a real challenge for the leadership of those firms to articulate that change and to achieve that change. Because the difficulty I face, and I talk at a lot of law firm partners meetings and things, is a large number of the partners go there to understand some of the changes that are happening. But then you will get 5 reasons why, yes, all of that's happening and all of that's applying to either other firms or other departments, but of course it doesn't apply to me. Our ability to rationalise why change is for everybody else and not for us is unlimited almost.
Not in my backyard. Increasingly, the mid-tiers firms are collapsing as well. I mean, there's so much gloom and doom actually. So is really the future bigger?
Not necessarily. No, I don't. There are some consultants who say, you're either very big or very small and the middle is dead. I think that's far, far too simplistic, actually. I think it comes back to the point of look at your client base and say, what services do they want? How do they want them delivered? Can we deliver a significant range of those at the price they want? Now, you've seen clients reducing the number of law firms they use, so that may mean that some of the other firms have got to broaden the range of practices they offer, and that does tend towards bigger, particularly if it's international. But there's absolute scope for firms of all sorts of sizes in the market. What there isn't scope for, in my view, is firms that say, look, this is how we operated for the last 25 years of the good years. It's been a bit tough the last few years, but we're going to soldier on. Because unless you're prepared to change, you're going to die. It's I'm afraid, as stark as that. It's like the farmer who won the lottery, and they said, well, what are you going to do now you've won the lottery? He said, I'm going to continue farming until it's all gone. And that's the problem. You've got to be looking. We are a service industry, and you've got to be looking. What is it the clients of today and the clients of tomorrow will want from us? And is our offering more compelling, however you measure that, than anything provided by our competitors, and of course by the new entrants coming in as well.
So what you're saying basically is that it's not all gloom and doom. There are golden opportunities out there. So what are those? Or possible?
I think actually, in a way, in a difficult market, there are potentially even more opportunities. And I think there will clearly be winners and losers over the next 5 or 10 years.
Winners or the winners or the...
And I think, yes, as you mentioned earlier, you will see some firms getting a lot bigger. I wouldn't be surprised by 2020 to see the first $5 billion law firm, which is still small by accounting standards. I would certainly see a growth in the $1 billion plus law firms. I think we've got 30 odd at the moment. I should think by the end of next year we'll probably have 50, something like that. So, you'll certainly see that. But I think people who are very clear on the market they're mapping out can be very successful. And one of the advantages that sometimes a small firm has, or a smaller firm has, they don't have a lot of cash to splash around and anything else, but they can be very nimble. They can take a decision very quickly. Turning around a big firm is very much the oil tanker exercise. And they can spot an opportunity and go for it. So, but if you sit in your bunker saying, woe is me, you won't find those opportunities in your bunker, I'm afraid. You've got to be out there, you've got to be thinking. You've got to be thinking, how do we do things differently? How do we access different clients? There are examples now of law firms who are, using social media like Facebook as a means of marketing. So you've got some very interesting things out there, but people have got to look beyond, this is the way I did things for the rest of my career.
Interesting. So this is a question I always ask. Yeah, this is a final question. If you could rule the world for a day, what would you do and change?
Well, other than the normal, bad poverty and whatever. But I suppose looking at the way politicians or whatever behave around the world, I think I would almost certainly ban career politicians. I think I'd say you had to have done a proper earning job for at least 10 or 15 years before you're entitled to be elected. Because
live a little.
I think, a slightly broader experience. I think we've seen it in the States for many years, but you're seeing it now of people who's they've been on the political sort of cycle, either as political researchers or advisors, and then MPs and whatever. And you think, well, if you actually understood a bit more, both about business and about the way people live and everything else, you would actually be so much more effective. So I'd really like to see that. Won't happen, of course, but I'd like to see it.
You may well live to rule the world for a day. Thank you so much, Tim.
My pleasure.